Hello and welcome to a brand new FM22 challenge series where I see how much sustained success I can have with Chelsea with an academy focused transfer policy rather than spending loads of money all the time. Because Chelsea do spend a lot of money. They have also had a great academy for a while now, and some of those players have finally started to flourish in the first team after years of neglect, but it could still be even better. So let's see what we can do. Each episode of the series will cover half a season starting with each transfer window. Now let's explain the rules. In a nutshell, we can only spend money to sign players who are or can become club-trained academy graduates. More specifically, this means we can only sign 1. Players from our youth intake, obviously. 2. Former Chelsea academy players like Fikayo Tomori or Tammy Abraham. 3. Players aged 18 or under who can become club-trained after 3 years. And 4. Free transfers, who obviously won't become academy graduates, but they're free, so by definition we're saving money, and who doesn't like that? And of course, everybody already here can stay as long as mutually desired, including Saul. Now obviously this is a squad that literally just won the Champions League that's had a world-class striker added to it, so there isn't much we need to address off the bat. The fact that basically the whole defence is out of contract in a year is an issue though. I swiftly tied down Andreas Christensen to a new deal, although Antonio Rudiger doesn't want to talk and indeed tells me he wants to consider his options. But I'm hopeful we can talk him round. We have 40 million left to spend as well, so we may as well pick up a few youngsters if nothing else. We are a bit light up front and on the flanks, and we have 2 slots left for the Champions League squad registration, so why not? Now of course, we have to be careful signing youngsters from abroad. Following Brexit, we can only immediately sign players under the age of 18 from the UK and Ireland. Otherwise, any signings are only on pre-contract until they turn 18, and also players can only play for us if they get a work permit, and crucially for us, they can only earn time towards becoming club trained if they have a work permit, so there isn't much point in signing players from abroad unless we know we're going to get one. We're going to be playing a high intensity style of football, so I moved to improve the coaching and medical teams as much as possible off the bat. Some of the guys here, especially Hilario, are absolutely awful. Now the board expect us to challenge for the Premier League title this season, and in our first team meeting the players agree with that, so no pressure straight away. They also believe that the code of conduct is too lenient, which, I mean, alright then, do you want me to bang ketchup like Antonio Conte? Anyway, in terms of transfers, we snap up young centre-back Leon King from Rangers for £600,000 as one for the future. Adam Holzek is more one for now, joining for £5 million from Sparta Prague just a few weeks before he became ineligible to be signed. He can play wide and he can play up front. We then part with £8.5 million for Francisco Conchal from Porto, as we only really have Hakim Ziyech, who's super comfortable on the left and he looks really good already. And then most substantially, we re-sign our first former blue in the shape of Jeremy Boga from Sassuolo for £9 million. Once the sell-on rebate is factored in. He'll hopefully provide some decent cover for Christian Pulisic on the left. We kick off the campaign with instant possible silverware in the form of the Super Cup against Villarreal. Edouard Mendy's injured, but otherwise this is more or less my planned first 11, but obviously we will be rotating throughout. I mean, I always say that on every single season of FM I play, and then by November half the squad are putting a transfer request because of lack of playing time. We dominate the match, having loads of chances, but don't score any goals, which is kind of the key of football. And then in extra time, N'Golo Kante makes an uncharacteristic mistake, and Villarreal score with their first real attack through Paco Alcacer, and then we lose. So absolutely fantastic start, guys. But we do bounce back straight away, winning our first Premier League game 2-0 against Brentford thanks to a screamer from Kante and a fine strike from Mason Mount. After the game, it's confirmed we've sold 25,000 season tickets, which is not bad going. Given the cash we'll hopefully be saving on transfer fees longer term, we should finally be able to sort out the stadium situation. Over the rest of August, we draw 1-1 at Wolves despite dominating, been off a lead to lose to Arsenal of all teams before beating West Ham 2-0 to go top, solely due to the fact that we've already played double the number of games as nearly everyone else for some reason. My decision to get more wingers in is justified as we lose Hudson-Odoi and Ziyech to reasonably lengthy injuries, and then we get handed a really quite awful Champions League group which will allow for barely any rotation. Yay! We end the month with our first properly good win though, beating Man City 4-1, including a casual Antonio Rudiger hat-trick before tying Reece James down to a lengthy new contract. We also sell Charlie Masonda, who will likely never be good enough for the first team. One player who definitely is good enough though is Mason Mount, who finishes second in August Player of the Month, having got 2 goals and 5 assists already. We begin September with an absolutely disgraceful defeat to Liverpool. Our away form at this point is awful, which is really great. We draw our opening Champions League game 0-0 with AC Milan in the most boring game of all time before we get a solid win over Leicester as Romelu Lukaku finally decides to score a goal. Then the second string plays Stoke in the Carabao Cup in a pretty uneventful game, nothing really to say about this. In all seriousness, that's the biggest ratings contrast within one team I've ever seen. Also shockingly, that is now finally our first away win of this save. Having now finally won away from home, we look for our first away league win of the season at Burnley, but contrive to throw away an early lead and lose. It's not really going well so far, is it? Almost every goal we concede is down to some kind of individual error, and we've had to play a ridiculous number of games in close succession, so that hopefully explains it. We just need some consistency, and a 4-1 win away at Shakhtar might help. We start with a pretty straightforward win at Brighton thanks to Lukaku again, but then we struggle to scrape a 1-1 draw with bottom of the league Leeds. We remain second, but Liverpool have 4 games in hand. This is absurd. My preferred lineup changes frequently due to dreadful performances from Jorginho, Christensen and all the wingers, but at least that means we're rotating. Given our pretty atrocious away form, I decided to just use the home system for every away game now as well, as it can't really get much worse. And then we go and thump PSG 4-1. We are ridiculously inconsistent, but perhaps this is the way forward. We beat Southampton 4-1 as well, with a performance which can actually be described as good. A brace from Lukaku, who has now definitively readjusted to life in the Premier League. We dispatched Lincoln in the 4th round of the League Cup, meaning we have actually won 3 games in a row for the first time all season, and sees my board rating increase beyond a C for the first time as well. I also agreed to sell Thiago Silva to Real Madrid in January because he's 37 years old. We only really need 4 centre-backs, and they've offered us 3.3 million for a man who, I must stress again, is literally 37. We end the month with a 1-0 win over Moneybags Newcastle, Edouard Mendy having his best game of the season to give us all 3 points. We remain second, but 4 points behind Liverpool, who have won every single match and terrifyingly still have 3 games in hand on us. We begin the penultimate month of the episode with news that we finally actually won something, as Reece James wins Young Player of the Month for October, which is good because he started the season terribly. We beat PSG again in a very one-sided game, which sees us make the knockouts and potentially knock them out as well. And the tactical switch seems to maybe be doing the trick, as we finally get a vital away win in the league, 1-0 against Spurs. Our defence is finally playing well, and Mendy, who had actually dropped early on in the season after some erratic performances, is starting to resemble his real-life self. Man United are next, and Man United fall 3-0, a performance so good even Timo Werner manages to score. We go top again, but with the old "we've played 4 more games than Liverpool for some reason" caveat. This hasn't happened in real life, why is it happening here? We draw away at Milan, and despite an absurd scoreline, this means PSG are indeed out. And then sorry, is this some kind of magic, or have we just won 2 league away games in a row? And that's not the only thing we've won. There's no better way to start the last month of the year than the nice early Christmas present that is Manager of the Month. It was a shaky start, but we certainly improved of late, and I'm glad the Premier League recognises this exceptional fictional achievement. And the good news keeps coming as we thump Norwich, Lukaku notching his 16th goal of the season. But it had to end somewhere. We finally discovered the reason why we've had to play way more games than everyone else so far, and it is, unfortunately, the Club World Cup. Now, if you've been watching this channel for a while, you may recall perhaps my seminal FM moment of all, somehow losing the Club World Cup final on penalties twice in the same season. Let's hope we don't repeat that one here. But first we have Villa, and they're 7th, and we know full well from the beta save how dangerous they can be. And it's a 0-0. We should have won, but not a disaster. We crushed Shakhtar to win our Champions League group, and then the board agreed to improve our youth recruitment, which will obviously help long term. I think we're pretty much maxed out now with that, so we just need to maintain it. And it's probably for the best because we get a preview of our first youth intake, and it's not exactly encouraging. 2 promising attacking midfielders is great, but that's a position which we A, don't really play, and B, we already have Mount, Havertz, Barkley and Loftus-Cheek for anyway, so yay. We beat Palace to maintain the unbeaten run, get Dinamo Kiev as our Champions League knockout round opponents, find our player development stat, and then it's time for the Club World Cup. My nemesis. We have Al Ahly in the semi-finals, and there will be no complacency from me. We win a penalty early on as Havertz is fouled, and Lukaku makes absolutely no mistake. He turns provider shortly afterwards as Mount taps home, Kante then somehow scores a header, and then Hudson-Odoi gets it on the act, and Lukaku has a second before the break. And that was that, we're into the final, but that's never been the issue. But we will have absolutely no excuses, as the final will be against a team I've literally never heard of from Uzbekistan, who inexplicably beat Flamengo. After that dodgy start, it's safe to say this team has finally started to click, as the average ratings show, so we deserve a trophy. We open the scoring 5 minutes in with Mount. Lukaku makes it 2 minutes later, and that's basically it. Rudiger seals it shortly before time, but I mean, you know, this is kind of how it was obviously going to go, right? One of the biggest mismatches ever, and we win the Club World Cup. I mean, it could easily have gone terribly wrong, couldn't it? I personally cannot stress how great this is. No matter what happens in the rest of the save, at least we have done this. We come back to England to find everyone else has now caught up with us in terms of Premier League games, and it means we drop to 4th behind both Manchester clubs. We look solid for at least Champions League qualification, but that might not be enough for the board, who wanted us to challenge for the title, and Liverpool already look very distant. But all we can do is keep winning. The second 11 knock West Ham out of a League Cup, and we get Watford in the semi-finals, which is nice. While it adds to an already packed fixture list, it certainly gives a chance for the first 11 to have a couple of weeks rest. Anyway, Mason Mount wants a new contract, and given that he's essentially some sort of hybrid of John Terry and Frank Lampard in terms of his integralness to the club, I obviously just give him whatever he wants. We end the year and the episode with a 3-0 win over Watford on Boxing Day. Lukaku finally gets a hat-trick, bringing his tally to 23 goals for the season, which is incredibly impressive so far, and then we hold on to beat Brentford with only 10 men on the pitch. Lukaku then caps off the year with 2nd place in the Ballon d'Or. The fact that we're in this position and that everyone is still alive, given that we've basically had to play 3 games a week since August, is pretty remarkable. We end the year 3rd, level with Man United, but just waving an unbeaten Liverpool. There's a few slightly lacklustre performers, but overall very solid from pretty much everybody. Lukaku, Mount, James and Rudiger are the standouts. The fact the latter still refuses to sign a new contract is a big problem, but let's not dwell on the bad, shall we? It's been a strong start. Let's see how the rest of the season goes next time.